How is tiny Ireland shaking up the global stage by boldly standing up for Gaza? You're about to discover what fuels this small nation to challenge global power. Ireland is set to rewrite the rules of diplomacy. It's been making headlines across Europe by openly condemning Israel and consistently supporting the Palestinian cause. But why has Ireland chosen this path? Is it just a political move, or is there something deeper fueling Ireland's commitment to Palestine? Let's explore the real reasons behind Ireland's bold stand with Gaza. Ireland has indeed been among the strongest voices within the European Union, calling for the recognition of the Palestine state in Gaza. This dedication has attracted global scrutiny and criticism both within the EU and beyond. Not only has Ireland criticised Israel's activities against the Palestinians, but it has also articulated its response in terms that have distinguished it from other EU countries. For instance, Ireland has requested to join the case against Israel's genocide charge at the International Court of Justice, a sharp departure from how Ireland has been approaching the Israeli-Palestinian crisis before now. But Ireland didn't stop there. In fact, the country has gone even further to propose a law that would ban imports from any Israeli settlement located in the West Bank. Meanwhile, the EU has been more cautious with the entire situation by choosing to be diplomatic in its approach rather than trying to challenge Israel to a ceasefire directly. Ireland's firm stance has made it a moral leader to some, but others see it as an outsider. The boldness of Ireland's approach can be traced back to its recent diplomatic tensions with Israel amidst the Middle East conflict. In response to Ireland's vocal stance, Israeli politicians have not been shy about their criticism either. As Israel's Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu once suggested that Palestinians in Gaza should go to Ireland or the desert if they want to avoid being nuked. This sort of comment only worsened the growing divide between the two countries. In retaliation, Ireland has expelled Israeli diplomats amidst comments that the country stands for human rights and international law. Ireland's response has continued to be shaped by its history. As the crisis in Palestine continues to be discussed across international forums, Ireland's increasing willingness to be a loud critic of Israel's stand is in opposition to the more neutral or cautious stance of many EU nations. Countries like Germany, France, and the UK have generally resorted to diplomatic solutions without taking firm positions. However, Ireland seems to believe that this issue requires more than just diplomatic protests. It demands action, both in terms of imposing economic sanctions and legal accountability to Israel's actions in Gaza. But why has Ireland chosen to be so vocal, even when faced with resistance from powerful states within the EU? Could Ireland's stance on Gaza be the beginning of a bigger shift within the EU? If other countries are to follow Ireland's lead, would the EU's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict change in any significant way? Well, before we go into that, let's take a closer look at why the country in faraway Europe would be so much interested in the affairs of a very tiny population somewhere in the Middle East. Ireland's pro-Palestinian stance is not a new development. It's deeply connected to its history, particularly its long struggles against British imperialism in the late 19th century. Having experienced colonization by a much stronger power, Ireland developed a strong sense of solidarity with other nations fighting for their freedom, including Palestine. In the early 20th century, Ireland's fight for independence was mixed with the growing movement of Palestinian nationalism. Both countries shared a common enemy at the time, in the form of British colonial rule, which suppressed their national identities and cultures. The Irish War of Independence, which took place between 1919 and 1921 and led to Ireland's first separation from Britain, was viewed by many in Palestine as a symbol of hope that a small oppressed people could successfully resist colonial powers. Some Irish nationalists, such as Eamon de Valera, were seen as heroes by many Palestinian leaders at the time, who were then struggling for their independence. The Irish people's empathy for Palestinians continued to grow as they saw similarities between their history and the situation in Palestine. During the 1940s, and as the State of Israel was established, Ireland's support for Palestine was in line with its broader foreign policy of opposing any form of colonial power and supporting countries fighting for their independence. The Irish Republican Army, which was fighting against British rule at the time, saw a shared struggle in Palestinian resistance groups. This bond grew even stronger after the 1967 Israel versus Arab country Six-Day War, which caused even more displacement and suffering for many Palestinians. Ireland became the first EU member to officially recognise the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1980 officially. While highly controversial in its time, this stance was consistent with Ireland's long-standing commitment to the freedom of the Palestinian state. As Irish nationalism evolved, particularly with the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, the country's view on human rights and equality became a central theme in Irish foreign policy. Ireland viewed the struggles of the Palestinian population through the same lens, which has continued to explain why its stance against Israel has only grown more vocal over time. In January of 2025, when Ireland took its boldest step yet by supporting the ICJ genocide case against Israel and moved to ban trade with Israeli settlements, it was no longer about a political statement, but a continuation of a long-standing solidarity formed in shared history and values. However, as Ireland continues to take a stand with Gaza, could their position set a pathway for other nations with similar histories of colonial resistance? When you consider a country's foreign policy, it becomes clear that political parties, alongside their leaders, play significant roles in shaping its national decisions. In Ireland, political leaders have led the Palestine movement, particularly within Sinn Féin, the biggest Irish party that has traditionally been a very outspoken advocate of Palestinian rights. This bridge between Irish politics and the Palestinian cause is not new. It's one that was built over decades of shared values and moral solidarity. It's not a passing trend, but a long-standing alignment. Sinn Féin has been very vocal and active in advocating for the state of Palestine for many years, saying it's a historic moment for both Ireland and Palestine. Sinn Féin's anti-colonial and social justice politics closely mirror those of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement. Sinn Féin has been a long-time ally of Palestinian nationalism and its political movement, particularly in the fight for freedom from occupation, a battle with which, given Ireland's history of resistance, they have a deep connection. Sinn Féin's support of the freedom of the Palestinian state is grounded in their shared experiences of colonial oppression and the fight for independence. Left-wing parties in Ireland, including Labour and Social Democrats, have continued to join forces to support Palestine, and the consistent push for a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine has been echoed time and time again in legislative action across Ireland. However, Ireland's support of Gaza doesn't end with just rhetoric. The country has been proactive in fighting for Palestinian rights in international forums. In addition, political leaders in Ireland have repeatedly kicked against Israeli policies and settlement expansion in the West Bank. This action also solidified Ireland's position as a nation that stands firm on its beliefs, regardless of external pressure. Other European countries were silent about Israelis' happenings in Gaza, but the government of Ireland under Prime Minister Simon Harris was not hesitant to denounce them. While Harris has been cautious at times, he has remained firm in supporting a two-state solution, even when Israel had opposed it. Sinn Féin's support for Palestine extends well beyond government action. The party has been very involved in organising grassroots movements, speaking at rallies and pushing for all fundamental changes in Ireland's foreign policy. Their calls for sanctions against Israel, especially those targeting settlement products, have put Ireland at odds with the broader EU consensus. Meanwhile, many EU countries, including Germany and France, decided to go for a more cautious diplomatic approach to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. But again, can Ireland's voice, which is so consistently strong on the international stage, continue to influence EU policy in the Middle East? Or will the growing pushback from around the world lead Ireland to reconsider its position? As tensions between Israel and the Palestinians keep rising, Ireland's position is getting noticed across the European Union. While the EU has mostly tried to stay neutral, keeping dialogue open with both sides and pushing for peace through diplomacy, Ireland has taken a more vocal and distinct path. Also, Ireland's growing criticism of Israeli policy, especially regarding its settlement expansion and the treatment of Palestinians, reflects a clear departure from the EU's default position. Ireland, on the other hand, has taken a much more drastic approach to its reaction. In 2021, the Irish Parliament made headlines when it became the first EU member nation to condemn the annexation of Palestinian territory as an illegal occupation. This strong stance places the country of Ireland in opposition to its EU counterparts, many of whom have been reluctant to be outspoken against Israel. These nations have taken a more diplomatic approach, which doesn't involve sanctioning Israel even if they disagree with an overwhelming number of Israeli policies. The failure of the EU to reenact these sanctions on Israel has been one of the leading causes of friction amongst Irish citizens, who have acted directly to promote stronger measures, including boycotting products produced in Israeli settlements. In the EU, Ireland stands almost alone in its willingness to challenge Israel in such direct and tangible ways. This is especially evident in the ongoing debate over the EU's response to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. While many EU countries have called for humanitarian pauses in the past, Ireland was among the first to call for a total ceasefire, with the view that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza was too severe for anything less. Some Irish lawmakers argue that the EU needs to do more than just pause violence. It needs to actively intervene and hold Israel accountable for what they see as violations. Ireland has also clashed with the European Commission on its position regarding aid to Palestine. In the wake of Hamas attacks back in 2023, the EU announced that it would suspend aid to Palestine. Ireland, however, rejected this decision and urged the EU to continue its humanitarian support without punishing Palestine civilians. But how long will Ireland maintain its independent stance on Gaza within the EU? Will other EU members follow Ireland's lead? Or will Ireland continue to stand alone on its calls for more decisive action against Israel? The next few years will be crucial for Ireland's relationship with the EU, especially as the Israeli-Palestine tension continues to grow. As tensions rise, will Ireland's voice influence the future of EU policy, or will the EU continue to adopt a more cautious and measured approach? Will Ireland's firm stance on Gaza force the EU to rethink its position? Across Ireland, the public sentiment regarding Palestine and Israel is not just a political stance, but a deeply felt belief that resonates with a large portion of the Irish population. In recent history, Palestine support has been a concrete, tangible thing whereby people of all backgrounds and classes have demonstrated their sympathy for the Palestinian state. There have been numerous manifestations of this support in various forms, including public displays, pressure groups, and media campaigns, all of which have reflected the public's unwavering passion for Ireland to take a moral stance on the issue. One of the key elements in Ireland's pro-Palestinian stance is the sheer size and passion of public protests. From Dublin to Cork, large numbers of people have gathered to express their opposition to Israeli policies in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. These rallies, typically organised by activist groups, have drawn people from diverse backgrounds, including students, workers, and families. What makes these protests stand out is the strong sense of solidarity that goes beyond mere political discussion. For many Irish people, this is personal, and the collective memory of Irish nationalism forms the basis of their support for the Palestinian cause. This history of oppression makes it easier for the Irish public to relate to the Palestinian struggle for freedom and independence. In addition, a growing number of advocacy groups across Ireland, such as the Ireland Palestine Solidarity Campaign and Sadaka, have continued to rally for the rights of Palestinians both in Ireland and in Gaza. These groups play a crucial role in raising awareness and pushing the Irish government to take a more decisive stance against Israel. In addition, media campaigns also played an essential role in shaping the opinion within the Irish people towards Palestinians. Global and national mainstream media have all reported on the growing pro-Palestinian sentiment in Ireland through public protests and declarations by Irish political figures calling for more action against Israel. These reports have not only influenced public opinion within Ireland, but also garnered international attention, particularly from other nations in the Middle East. The use of social media platforms has significantly amplified the voices of pro-Palestinian activists by enabling people to share their opinions about the protests in real time. Despite all of this, Ireland's support for Palestinians in Gaza has not gone unchallenged, especially by Israel and its allies. The Israeli government has repeatedly condemned Ireland's shift towards the country, referring to it as a measure that would destroy efforts that guarantee peace in the Palestinian territories in the Middle East. Israel's public response ranged from diplomatic protest to claims that Ireland is moving in support of terrorist groups, a claim which has merely stoked the flames in Irish public opinion. However, despite the backlash from Israel, solidarity for the people of Palestine in Gaza has continued to grow. And this growing wave of public support for Palestine also aligns with Ireland's political landscape. As Sinn Féin, the left-wing opposition party in Ireland, gains ground in the country's political sphere, it has remained an increasingly important voice for Palestinian advocacy. Sinn Féin's leader, along with other political figures, has been determined to support the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, which calls for global pressure on Israel to end its unlawful occupation of Palestinian territories. Sinn Féin's alignment with the Palestinian cause has given the movement increased visibility, and the public sentiment it needs to continue shifting in a more pro-Palestinian direction. The global backlash against Ireland's support for Palestine is not tempered with the Irish public either. Ireland's stance has only strengthened over time, while also becoming a key part of the country's national identity and a symbol of resistance and commitment to justice. This position has not only shaped Ireland's foreign policy, but also highlighted the moral foundation that drives the Irish people's understanding of international conflict and human rights. But the real challenge ahead now is this: can Ireland's voice be heard on the global stage, especially with strong opposition from Israel and its European allies? Will Ireland's continued support for Gaza impact its international reputation, or will diplomatic pressure sway its foreign policy decisions? As Ireland continues to increase its pro-Palestinian stance, it's clear that Ireland's diplomatic landscape is also entering a new phase. In the coming years, the long-term consequences of Ireland's position on Gaza and Israel will become more apparent, not just in terms of its relationship with Israel, but also in its interactions with the broader EU and the international community. The question now is, what does this bold foreign policy stance mean for Ireland's future relations, and how will it impact the country's role in global diplomacy? One of the most immediate diplomatic consequences for Ireland has been its relationship with Israel. Recently, tensions between the two countries have risen, and Ireland's government has faced intense pressure to reconsider its stance. At some point, the Irish Parliament made a motion to expel Israel's ambassador from the country, but that was later rejected. Despite this, Ireland has remained firm, insisting that its actions were in line with its commitment to human rights and international law. The response of the Israeli government has also instilled some level of concern amongst Irish individuals, notably those who are fearful that the country's stance on Gaza could further lead to diplomatic isolation from its Western allies. And although Ireland's position in defense of Palestine has earned its praise as a moral leader, it has also subjected the country to possible diplomatic backlash. In the remaining part of 2025, the growing international pressure on Ireland, especially from Israel allies in the EU, will be a key factor to watch out for. Will Ireland's government continue to take an uncompromising stance on Palestinian rights, or will more pressure force a change in the course? Ireland's relationship with the European Union is now at a pivotal moment. While many EU countries have supported a two-state solution that leans towards Israel, Ireland's criticism of Israel sets it apart from the broader EU stance. Ireland's resistance to EU aid suspensions in Palestine and its calls for sanctions against Israeli settlements have raised questions about its future within the EU. At an international level, Ireland is presenting itself as a moral voice, insisting that the right be done about Gaza while insisting on respecting for human rights too. And as the US and other great powers continue to stand by Israel, Ireland's voice can be a welcome counterpoint to the argument. This creates the possibility for Ireland to lead by example and show how small nations can still make global impact through principled foreign policy. Looking ahead, Ireland's pro-Palestinian actions are likely to influence not just EU policy, but also its role in the Middle East peace process. Could Ireland play a more prominent role in facilitating peace talks between both parties? Will it continue to call for an international effort to hold Israel accountable for its actions in Gaza? Ireland's position will likely change over time, and its leadership on the global stage will be tested. As Ireland's moral authority continues to grow, will its position on Gaza be accepted by the global community, or will the pressures of diplomacy force Ireland to reconsider its foreign policy approach? We would be waiting. Ireland's continued support of Gaza in 2025 is a testament to its history of standing against injustice and doing what is right. From its drastic actions against Israel's policies to the rising public support within the country, Ireland is emerging as a front voice globally. But with rising tensions both within and without, Ireland's future pro-Palestinian voice is in the balance. As the rest of the world looks on, Ireland's international influence may just be beginning. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.